Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Slice a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. You do not need to adjust your calendar. It is indeed a Monday. As promised, we are going to be coming at you 3 times this week. You'll never know what day it's going to be until we pop up in your feed because that's the way we roll. But today, Dennis and I are back together. We haven't seen each other in, I think it's been over a week now.
Something like that.
Out living our lives, me in Las Vegas, you know, supporting your kids and doing everything you can all over the place. How's your week been?
You know, it was good to get back to work so I could get some rest. Started last Thursday. We had shows. We had a baseball game. My youngest caught the first 2 innings, pitched the last 2 innings, went 2 for 2 at the plate with a third plate appearance. He got hit by a pitch. One of his hits, I think he just hit it so high that the infield was like, yeah, there's no way that's coming down on the infield. And it just dropped in on the infield. But he pitched 2 innings, gave up 2 unearned runs, struck out 5, walked 3, gave up 2 hits. He was the best pitcher on both teams last Thursday night. So it was good to see that they won 15-5. My other son had a show in Rutland on Friday at this place called Skatopia. If anarchy's your thing, that's your home, man. You know, there's no internet, no cell service. You're way out in southern Ohio. 88 acres of skate bowls and tunnels and just all kinds of shit out there. Then he put on a great show, had another great show last night, burn off that Easter meal. And then today it was back at the grind for Dad.
I know Monday, it was no joke. You know, this is the day that I always forget to just like not look at social media too, because people start putting these headlines and you're like, oh my God. And then, oh yeah, that's right. It's April 1st.
So, and I would be remiss if I didn't plug the band blackpowderband.com. Go check out.
So today we are going to be looking at our top 25 quarterbacks for Dynasty pre-draft, see where we're shaking out after a fast and furious free agent season. But before that, we do have a little bit of news. Dennis, the Eagles sent Hassan Reddick to the New York Jets. Seems like a good piece. Jets feel like they're kind of all in on 2024 to save their coach's job, to see if Aaron Rodgers can bring it back. Feels like a lot of pressure in New York, and we haven't even hit May yet.
Yeah, there are times, and we see it in fantasy football too, where you just push all your chips into the middle of the table. And that's what the Jets did last year with Aaron Rodgers. They're like, look, we're going to bring this guy that's got a couple years left. If he wants a player, we're going to get it because he believes he's going to make it work and we're going to win. They need offensive linemen. They need defense. They have some of the best defensive backs in the league, if not the best. They have a good defense. They've got some good skill players. We got to see if it'll all gel now. Reddick is a veteran who was, looking for an opportunity. I think the Eagles are like, we'd rather have a draft pick. So, the Jets are going all in. Let's see what they can do.
We got a couple pieces of running back news. Raheem Mostert got reworked his deal, added a 1-year extension, so now goes not only this year but next year. And then Ezekiel Elliott working on a potential return to the Cowboys. Elliott's deal has been rumored for a little while, hasn't happened yet. Would kind of make sense to me for both sides. But how do you feel about these two running back moves?
So Mostert is just he's going to be the grinder that allows Devin Achane to play, 8 to 10 to 12 touches a game. They need somebody, and they've got Jeff Wilson. They brought Salvon out. They literally have the running back room band all back together this year. Chris Brooks will be coming back from injury as their RB5, and he's the guy that really gives them the size. But at 31, 32 years old, Raheem Mostert's kind of settled into the dad bod phase of his career. So, while he was never a big guy to speak of, he's probably playing heavier than he's ever played because he's getting a little older now. Still explosive. We've seen him put up great fantasy numbers. He'll be the one. Devin Achane on any given week could be the guy that leads them in fantasy scoring now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, the last piece of news, not as happy in news. Rashee Rice being sought, and they're hoping he will cooperate with the Dallas police after a car that he either owned or leased was involved in street racing that led to a pileup. It's unclear whether he was actually in the car, but the car fled the scene. Not probably what the Chiefs were looking for this off season. Are there was a lot of panic trading yesterday. I saw some people come out and say Rashee Rice is this year's Henry Ruggs. I feel like it's a little bit different. We don't know that he was even in the car. We definitely don't know that he was drunk. And no one, from what I read, died in this accident. It was more of a, you shouldn't reckless driving kind of thing.
Right.
But it can't be great.
No, definitely not great, Bob. It's tough. You get kids who are prone to do stupid shit just because they're kids. You give them a bunch of money and they get, I get it. My uncle has a Corvette. He drives fast. And my son went out and bought himself a Miata, and he likes to drive fast. You got to calm your shit down. I think the Ruggs thing is a stretch unless it comes out that Rice was drinking. I mean, then if that's the case, then I'm hesitant to believe that it wasn't him, because you don't go spend $60,000 on a new Corvette and then let just anybody drive it. And if it was somebody else, you can bet that he would be his lawyers would be releasing a statement that says it wasn't Rashee Rice, instead of a statement that says, hey, Rashee's complete. He's cooperating completely with the police. So, which is what his lawyer said today. So, I don't know how much trouble he's going to get in, but street racing ain't good.
It's definitely not good. Probably not what they are looking for. Well, let's let's jump into our look at Dynasty QBs, and this is pre-draft where we'll see rookies getting dropped in. So this is post-free agency, though. Dennis, I'll let you start. Give us 25 through 20.
25 through 20. So I have Justin Fields at 25. Make sure I don't have any spaces in there. I think when I look at the Pittsburgh situation, it feels like Fields is going to get a shot after Russ. So I've got Fields at 25, Aiden O'Connell at 24, Derek Carr at 23, Will Levis at 22, and Aaron Rodgers at 21.
You can go ahead and give 22.
And Matt Stafford at 20.
So that's kind of the first 6 in this chunk here. You actually have a guy that I don't have up there. I'm sure or you actually have 2 that I don't have so far in top 25. I feel like beyond the bottom level in here, we're probably going to have a lot of the same guys in a different order.
Right.
But to me, it was a little hard this off season because of so much movement and because of what some teams were telling you. Maybe why are you still in on Justin Fields and Aiden O'Connell?
So I think O'Connell is going to be the starter in Las Vegas unless they go really high on it.
I don't think he is.
I don't think Minshew beats him out.
I think if they wanted, if they believed in Aiden O'Connell, they would have played this offseason differently. I think Gardner Minshew is their starter, and that's why they gave him $25 million.
Well, we'll see. They're talking a lot of good stuff about O'Connell. The thing
I
is,
didn't think he was bad. I thought when Antonio Pierce got hired, there was a chance. I also think they're going to end up taking a quarterback in the second or third round to give themselves options.
But to be fair, I mean, Minshew and O'Connell are kind of clones.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Neither one of them leaves me feeling that excited, but I don't have either of them in my top 25.
I feel like, Pierce is going to want to be aggressive offensively, and O'Connell getting those starts under his belt. It didn't work out in the long run for Davis Mills, but I think that Las Vegas is not in the position that Houston was to draft a quarterback. Honestly, they're going to have to go up if they want J.J. McCarthy, and I just don't think they will. And so they're going to have to then make a choice. Do they want to probably overdraft Bo Nix or Michael Penix in the first? And if they don't, they're probably not going to get them in the second. And I don't think anybody after those guys is going to be ready to start this year. I mean, I get it. Everybody's going to trot out Brock Purdy when I say that, but and that may very well happen. I just think that O'Connell is going to get a shot. They've got Zamir White, whom they like. They've got Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, who are a good wide receiver duo. Trent Tucker to take the top off the defense. And then Michael Mayer, I expect to take a big step this year as well. So they've got a solid offense, if not spectacular. And O'Connell, I think, has the opportunity to see what he can do with his rookie contract.
So for me at 25, I have Russell Wilson. Could he revive his career in Pittsburgh? He could. It's really hard to tell what Pittsburgh wants, and what Wilson has left. At number 24, I have Geno Smith. I also don't think he has a lot of years left, but this, the first few guys here are guys I'm not sure are starting beyond this year. And a lot of the guys I have below them, I'm not sure ever are, reliable starters. 23, I have Derek Carr. I actually think the Saints could be a sneaky team that could be, they could be a wild card team in quarterback drafting. They don't have hardly anything behind him anymore with Jameis Winston gone. They only have Jake Hayner and Nathan Peterman. And I don't know, it very well could be the Saints end up starting over a lot after next year. Dennis Allen probably not on the longest leash. I have the same number 22 as you, Will Levis. I think he's going to get a crack. I don't know if I believe in him either. 21, Aaron Rodgers. I think he'll be fine, provided he's back healthy. I just, we know he's playing in 2024. I'm not really willing to commit that he's playing again after that. And then at 20 for me, I have Bryce Young. He did not have the greatest rookie year. They've done a lot to try to build around him, and he could certainly bounce back. I haven't given up on him, but it was not great. And we've also seen in the last few quarterback classes, just because you were taken high in the draft doesn't mean you're going to pan out.
I get it. And I mean, I'm a little more bullish on Bryce Young. I feel like they've done a lot this offseason to put him in a position to be successful. And then they bring in Dave Canales, who did great with Geno. I don't even have Geno in my top 25. He was QB 19 last year after being QB 11 his first year with Canales.
He was QB 6.
Yeah, somewhere up there,
Well,
astronomically high.
Yeah.
And then Canales goes to Tampa. Baker shows up. Baker has he was QB 9 last year. So I'm really nervous if I roster Baker, but I'm bullish if I roster Bryce Young. You know, they brought in, who was the receiver they brought in? Deontay
Johnson.
Yeah. You know, I like Mingo coming out. He's got a chance to be kind of that brutally strong kind of wild card player. Adam Thielen caught 103 balls last year, and it's like nobody talks about it. Chuba Hubbard came out of nowhere, and we got Miles Sanders going into the second year of a contract, so he's going to get better, right? Isn't that how Miles Sanders does? He gets a little bit better each year. So they brought in those two big old brawling guards to stick on the offensive line. I like Bryce Young this year. I think he's got a shot to take a big step.
Well, that'd be good. He's, there's a couple of last year's rookies that I have in this QB2 range that it would be nice to see them take a step forward, and they could, but not a guarantee.
Yeah, I like Will. Will Levis I have at 23. We both do. And 22. He's a guy that could be a real wild card. Because he's got a big arm. If he can lay off drinking the mayonnaise, I think that there's a chance that he can develop a connection with Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins. They've got Chigo Okonkwo at tight end. They bring in Joe Alt, the tackle, to pair with Skoronski that they grabbed last year. Continue to build that offensive line. There's a real chance Levis takes a big step this year as well.
So why don't you give me your number 19 through 13 to complete your quarterback 2 group?
So 19, I've got Baker Mayfield. Like I said, I'm nervous. He looked good last year. The change in offensive coordinators got me sweating a little bit. Deshaun Watson at 18. I'm at that point now where, you know what they say, I'm from Missouri, you got to show me. He hasn't showed me anything the last couple of years, trying to work his way back from basically being out of the league. So, stroke gate's got him down, and there's all there is to it. Got Bryce Young at 17. I already went on about why I'm high on Bryce. He's a guy
that much higher than me, a couple spots.
Jared Goff, he was QB8 last year. I've got him at 16. I'm as much as a Detroit, maybe this is just my Detroit Lions fandom saying, he was QB8 last year. It's never going to happen again. I'm not going to fall for it. Maybe that's what's got me down on Goff a little bit. Kirk Cousins at 15, great weapons. As long as Atlanta keeps him up with London and Pitts and Bijan, there's a lot of good stuff going on in Atlanta. And who's their new coach?
Raheem Morris.
So who's their new offensive coordinator? Because Morris is a defensive guy. I forget who their OC is.
Let me look.
But, Kirk Cousins.
Zach Robinson
from the Rams tree there. So, it could be good for Kirk Cousins. He did well under O'Connell, so who came out of that Rams tree. At 14, I've got Brock Purdy. This is a tough one because he's been putting up numbers since he started. And at some point, we got to believe he's a QB1. I'm just not ready to go yet this year. It feels like there might be a little discontent amongst the wide receiver group this year. We'll have to see how that happens, what happens there. Would it surprise me if Purdy finishes a QB1? Not at all. 13, I've got Tua Tagovailoa. Miami's got an explosive offense. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. They had a Jonnu Smith. Devon Achane's going to catch some passes out of the backfield, and they can run the ball with Mostert, Wilson, and Achane as well.
Okay, so for me, I have a lot of the same folks. I have Matthew Stafford at 19. You had him at 20, not too big of a change. And then Baker right ahead of him, and then Deshaun Watson. So we kind of have those three in a row. Baker for me is 18. Watson at 17. It's weird, Watson before, the trade and coming back from everything, we just kept saying it, as long as he gets back on the field, he's like a top 5 dynasty guy. But we have not seen it. He hasn't been able to play that many games. He's another guy. I could see him bouncing back and this being too low, and I could see this being way too high. We'll have to see how it shakes out. I like you have Goff at 16. I like what he's doing with Detroit. I would like to see some kind of a contract extension, would make me feel a little bit better. I have Kirk Cousins at 15, same as you. I like the landing spot. I think he's going to be rock solid. I have Anthony Richardson at 14, and I like Anthony Richardson's potential, and this could end up being too low, but we had concerns about whether his playing style would keep him healthy in the NFL. He did nothing in year 1 to assuage those concerns. Went out with a concussion, then went out with a season-ending injury, played 2 full games, 2 partial games. I like the potential of some of the weapons around him, but it could take a little bit of time to develop. So I have him high end QB2. Same with my number 13 is Brock Purdy. I'm like you. It feels like he should be potentially considered in QB1, could be on the cusp of QB1, but I have him right there at the top of QB2 range. Why don't you give us your 12 through 7, the first half of your QB1 range?
So leading off my QB1s, I got the diminutive one, Mr. Kyler Murray. I have been anti-Kyler Murray virtually his entire career. And maybe it's because I expect Marvin Harrison's going to land in Arizona. Now they're going to have some good wide receivers, some wide receivers with size. Trey McBride has come on. I like the opportunity. James Conner has been playing really well at running back, and I feel like they've stacked the running back room behind him with guys of varying skill sets. So if Conner gets injured again, which he's prone to do because he plays hard, they'll be able to piece together a solid running game. And then you add Marvin Harrison and Michael Wilson, if he can stay healthy. You got a couple big guys. Greg Dortch is there. And Trey McBride has just, he's looking like he could be the tight end 1 at any given season. So I went with Kyler Murray at 12. I got Richardson at 11. I'm buying the hype. I think with Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor and Josh Downs, there's enough weapons there that will allow him to make plays not with his legs. And when things break down, I think that they'll try to insulate him a little bit so that he doesn't take some of the chances maybe he did this in his rookie season. He's a big guy. He's 6'5", 240 pounds. There's always gonna be some opportunity for collision with Anthony Richardson. But I'm gonna bet on the talent. And since this is Dynasty, I'm looking at the next 2, 3, 4 years, and I don't think Richardson's going anywhere on this rookie deal. They brought in Flacco to back him up. Flacco's not going to run the Anthony Richardson offense, but I think they're going to spend some time working in a bunch of Flacco stuff for Anthony Richardson. They're both big, tall guys, and so I think Flacco will be able to kind of help him with, what he's looking at, how to see the field, and Richardson's got a good arm. So I like Richardson at 11. Trevor Lawrence at 10. I struggled with this one. He finished a QB 14 last year. Frankly, he's a guy that's just never quite lived up to his promise. And so I kind of tiered off my top 10. And so Lawrence is the third in my third tier. I got Justin Herbert there at QB 9. It isn't that I'm down on Herbert's talent. I'm down on his weapons, and I'm down on the changes to the offense. I think Herbert is still a phenomenal quarterback. Then I've got Dak Prescott at 8. So that my tier 3 is Dak, Justin Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence. Dak really, if he wasn't as old as he is, I'd probably have him up in my next tier. But even if they re-sign Zeke, it's not like they're going to have this fantastic running game. I love Zeke Elliott. He's a Buckeye. I'm a Buckeye. Go Ohio State. But there's just, what he can do now is not, he's not going to provide a bunch of pop and sizzle. He's a grinder, and he may very well grind 1,200 yards out this year. 3.9 yards a pop. Great for Zeke. But Dak is going to be chucking the ball to CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, and who's that tight end? Ferguson. At 7, I've got Jordan Love. In 6, I've got CJ Stroud. Those two were really, I kept flipping them back and forth. So I know I went probably one extra, but they were so close. I just kept flipping them back and forth, and because they both just have 1 year, and it's tough for me. It's a close call there.
Yeah, so for me at 12, I have Tua Tagovailoa. You had him just one lower at 13. I like his setup in Miami, and fit in that offense. I have at 11, I have Kyler Murray. I'm a little bit like you. I've always been a little leery, and honestly, then I have, same as you, Trevor Lawrence at 10. And if I was looking at my bottom 3 here, I think it speaks more to how unsteady I feel about the quarterback position in general than how great I feel about either of those, any of those 3 players. Then at 9, I have Jordan Love. I'm like you. I thought he had a great year last year, probably a more surprising year than I was expecting. They have some good weapons around him. So I felt like this was a pretty big jump for me because I had him probably down in the QB3 range last year because I was not a believer. I have Dak at 8 as well. Age plays a factor there. Also, where's Dak going to be in 2025? And that's a little bit, for me, I couldn't justify pulling him up any higher because it doesn't feel like they're completely solid ground with the Cowboys. I think he'll be somewhere. But is it going to be as good a fit? We've seen some of these guys who are great in one offensive system and set up that end up leaving, and it doesn't work out quite how we had expected. And I think when you're talking about, a top end dynasty asset, he'll be a starter somewhere in 2025, barring injury, but it could not be Dallas, and it could, be a less attractive situation. At 7 for me, I have Justin Herbert. I still like the talent, but the coaching change there and what they're doing on offense makes me a little nervous. So we shall see. And you went to 6, so I'll do my 6 is Jalen Hurts. I think he has good talent too, but we saw quite a little fall off at the end of last season. There's some weird vibes in Philadelphia between the players and the coaches. 2 years ago, if you had told me he was getting Kellen Moore, I would be pretty pumped. But that whole Kellen Moore thing did not work out for the Chargers whatsoever. And, I feel like there's a lot of personalities on the Eagles. I think they're going to miss Jason Kelce more than a lot of people realize. I think he was not only a great center, but a good locker room emotional presence. And there is a lot of outsized personalities there. I liked the addition of Saquon, but I also think that could give them a more robust actual running game and maybe have running backs carrying more and being more involved in the red zone, which takes away a little bit maybe from Jalen Hurts doing everything back there. So I dropped him down just a little bit. So, Dennis, why don't you give us your top 5?
So I've got Lamar at 5, and I struggled with, I went back and forth with, is it too high? Because now he's got Derrick Henry, and it's not like they're throwing the ball a ton anyways. So Henry may all of a sudden eat up a bunch of yards and touchdowns that Lamar used to get. Or B, do I have him too low? Because, he's Lamar Jackson, and with Derrick Henry, he could very well be, it could be feasting day. We've seen Lamar have an extremely efficient passing season before. I mean, he threw 36 touchdowns or 32 touchdowns on, 450 passes or something in his first MVP season. And so Lamar is kind of just a guy that could do that. And so I I ended up settling on 5, but I could see him go 3 spots in either direction easy. Jalen Hurts at number 4. I think Hurts is going to bounce back. I think he was injured last year, and I think that led to some of the inconsistency in his game. I still love the pairing of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert is a very good tight end in the passing game. They'll continue to piece together who's going to be the wide receiver 3. But I think now, as much as we kind of look at it and go, what's going to happen at running back? Because that was always a frustration for fantasy managers who rostered Philadelphia Eagle running backs is, when are Boston Scott and Kenny Gainwell going to start stealing points from DeAndre Swift? Oh no, here comes the tush push and stuff. I think Saquon Barkley is going to get rid of a lot of that stuff. I know that, he's old, getting older by running back standards, but he's still an alpha running back. He's 6 foot, 230 pounds, good speed, catches the ball better than any running back on the Philadelphia Eagles, runs the ball better than any running back on the Philadelphia Eagles. And frankly, he runs the ball better than Jalen Hurts too. So I've got Jalen at 4. I think Jalen's going to settle into the passing game a little more. Got Joe Burrow at 3. Burrow put the screws to us last year. He should have listened to his buddy Jamar Chase and sat out those first 4 weeks and got himself right. But he tried to play through it, and it pinched all of us fantasy managers, not just with his numbers, but with Chase's numbers and Higgins' numbers. They got Higgins back. Would I be surprised if they trade Higgins before the season starts? No, but they franchise tagged him. They basically said, look, we want you here. The reality of the situation is the business side of it. We can't really give you a long-term contract because we got Chase coming up, and it is what it is. They got rid of Mixon. They brought in Zach Moss, who's dollar store Mixon. Chase Brown will get a little bit more pop. They brought Gesicki. Overall, I think Joe Burrow is the straw. He's the Reggie Jackson. He's the straw that stirs the drink in Cincinnati. He cheeses your Cincinnati chili. That's what Joe Burrow does. And number 2, I got Mahomes. As much as I wanted to put him over Allen, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Mahomes finishes as the QB1. But now we've got the Rashee Rice incident going. They're going to need to continue to bolster the offense, the wide receiver weapons. Josh Allen at 1, he just makes up for it with the running game. I don't think he's going to miss Gabe Davis. They've got Dalton Kincaid. They've got Stephon Diggs. Diggs does worry me a little bit. If his second half slide last year really was the beginning of the end, it could go fast, and he could be a detriment to that offense. I mean, he could still have a good year, and if you look at his season-long numbers, Diggs had a good year, but man, those last 8 weeks, he was awful for fantasy.
Yeah, definitely a concern. My top 5, I have Stroud at number 5. I like what he did. I like the offense they're building around him. Number 4, I have Joe Burrow. I think he's going to be just fine. Like you said, passing still has plenty of weapons, some interesting pieces. See if they get Mike Gesicki going there at tight end. Number 3, I have Lamar Jackson. He just seems to find a way to do it and to keep scoring. So I have him up there. And then I have the same 2 as you, Patrick Mahomes, and 1, Josh Allen. So not too dissimilar once we get at the top. Before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. So who was your toughest cut from the top 25?
So my toughest cut from the top 25 was probably Daniel Jones. Not that he would have been super high, but I know there's a little grumbling going on, and they lost Saquon Barkley. To me, that feels like they're gonna run Daniel Jones more like Brian Daboll used to with Josh Allen. Jalen Hyatt and Wan'Dale Robinson, I feel like they're settled into their roles in the receiving core. Darren Waller and Daniel Bellinger are going to combine to make a full tight end. But Hyatt is going to provide the deep ball and the deep speed that I don't know that was there. And going into his second year, could they, like where they're drafting? If they drafted McCarthy, am I going to be surprised? No. But likely somebody jumps them and drafts McCarthy, i.e. Minnesota. And so that leaves them looking at Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze. And if that's the case, then they bring in a legitimate wide receiver one. And then that puts Daniel Jones into a great position to kind of earn his next contract by having good weapons. The receivers in New York, I know we were talking the same thing. If such and such steps up, Sterling Shepard got injured again. Wan'Dale Robinson was a rookie and he was injured. When Wan'Dale came back, he looked good, and I think he has the potential to be a really good slot wide receiver and a very productive slot wide receiver. They just need that alpha, that prototype, big-bodied, good speed, good route runner, kind of alpha wide receiver that's going to be between Wan'Dale Robinson and Jalen Hyatt. If they get that, then it could be a really nice season for Daniel Jones. So leaving him out was a little bit of a challenge. I had him at 26, not far out. It was, I could see him being a top 18, even as high as top 14. He finished, 2 years ago? What was he? I just had it here. 2 years ago, he was QB 9.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It makes me a little nervous that they're talking about his injury guarantee and stuff the same way that Denver talked about Russell Wilson's injury guarantee down the stretch, and that there's a lot of talk that Drew Lock chose them over Seattle because they told him he had a chance to be their starter. So those don't seem like great signs. Brian Daboll could go from coach of the year to on the hot seat in a fat hurry here too, because there's been some personality clashes with coordinators, and sometimes when you feel like you're coaching for your job, you make some interesting decisions. For me, mine that was the toughest cut was Justin Fields. I like Justin Fields. This time last year we were debating about whether he could be a top 12 guy, but at some point you have to acknowledge what the league is telling you, and it appears they could not find anyone that wanted him, and Chicago was so far out on him they were willing to take a conditional 6th round pick. Does he end up getting to be the starter in Pittsburgh? Does that end up working out? I don't think he went to an ideal offensive coordinator either, because we haven't really seen Arthur Smith be able to develop young quarterbacks that have upside but some flaws. I mean, it didn't work out too well for Desmond Ridder. He had seemed to have a quick trigger. I just don't think it's a great situation either, so I couldn't put him any higher than 26. So our next question is going to be the guy who in the 15 to 25 range who you feel like could make a leap to QB1.
So I didn't catch the whole 15 to 25.
Well, let's just say 14 to 25, because you and I had the same guy, and I just realized I did the same thing.
So, to me, it's Brock Purdy. And so Purdy's calling card has been efficiency. We talked about Lamar Jackson in his MVP season, throwing 36 touchdowns on 400 and some odd attempts. Last year, on 444 attempts, Purdy threw 31 touchdown passes. Playing in front of a great offensive line with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and, most of all, Christian McCaffrey. He's got a plethora of weapons. I mean, if we were comparing, NFL offenses to, war superpowers, they're above the U.S. and Russia. Purdy is, in the weapons he has. He's got a phenomenal arsenal of weapons. So to me, he finished his QB6 last year. Would I expect there to be a little bit of regression? I think so, because teams just get better. Going into this year, they only had 4 games, and while they gathered more intel as the season went along, um, Kyle Shanahan's a pretty good offensive mind. I like Brock Purdy. He could just as easily repeat as the QB6. He's kind of with the way he's kind of like he ran a 4.56 40 at the combine, but he's not a running quarterback. And Purdy he's sort of like dollar store Joe Burrow in that the way that he throws the ball around the field. So him finishing top 5, I don't think is going to make people go, oh, okay, that's crazy. Because if anything, what it makes us do is we don't give Purdy enough credit. We give all the credit to Ayuk and Samuel and McCaffrey instead of Brock Purdy for making the great decisions.
Mine is Anthony Richardson. I think he has Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson upside, but I want to see him stay on the field. Getting 2 full games and 2 partial games wasn't enough of a sample for me, so I feel good with where I have him right now. But I think he has a lot of potential. Final question: who is somebody that's in your QB1 range who you're the most nervous about?
It's 2 people, and I kind of touched on them a little bit earlier, and that's C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love. Because they both had really good seasons. Love finished as QB5. Stroud is QB13. I think that Love may have the better weapons, though adding Joe Mixon to Houston is an upgrade over Devin Singletary. Adding Josh Jacobs to Green Bay is an upgrade over Aaron Jones. As much as I love Aaron Jones, Love kind of he's growing with that young wide receiver core. And I think Houston is doing that with Stroud as well. I think Stroud might actually have a little better offensive line with Titus Howard and Juice Scruggs and Laramie Tunsil. Green Bay, I think, needs to do some work. They were trotting out the ghost of David Bakhtiari every few weeks over the last couple seasons. And as much as I like Bakhtiari, the injuries took their toll, and he wasn't the player he once was. They got a good center in Elgton Jenkins, wherever you put the TG at. But Green Bay and Houston both, to me, it's like, what's going to happen in year 2 with these guys? Are they going to take in? And I get it, Jordan Love isn't year 2, but it's his second year starting. And so they both kind of are coming into this thing. And so I'm a little uneasy. Like if I had a Superflex Dynasty team and I'm starting both of them, there are some nights I'm going to wake up in a cold sweat and think, oh my God, what did I do? And other nights I'm going to go to sleep thinking, oh my God, what did I do?
For me, I'm going to say it's Trevor Lawrence. We had real high hopes for him. It was the number 1 overall pick coming out. I think the fact that I have him at QB10 is not so much because I believe in him, it's just because I have questions about so many people in the quarterback range. Because I think we may have seen that he's peak top end QB2 material. And depending on how the draft goes, I may end up tweaking him down into that range. Right now, I think he has more name value than actual production value. He was QB14 last year. That's probably about where, probably about where he would be. So, and I don't feel like with Lawrence, you get a lot of consistency. So I don't feel like I got too many bottoming out games, but I also don't feel like I got that many big games in the Dynasty League last year. I moved him for 2 first-round picks and just let Brock Purdy and Baker Mayfield be my quarterbacks, and I don't have any regrets about that.
I get it. I don't have a ton of Lawrence shares, but we'll see how it rolls this year.
Well, that'll do it for us today. You will not have to wait very long to see these charming, smiling faces because we will be back tomorrow as we turn over to looking at the pre-draft dynasty rankings for running backs. That's where we're going to finish out the week. We'll be tomorrow and coming to you a little bit of late night action on Thursday, later for Dennis than it is for me. But we're going to look at running backs 50 to 26 tomorrow, and then the top 25 on Thursday night. So something to look forward to. But Dennis, if even a 23-hour wait is too long, what can the people do?
Head on over to their favorite podcast platform. And if you're subscribed on Google, get something new. It's going away this month. So go get you another podcast platform.
Isn't it like a week or something? It's like beginning
it's coming up fast. I keep getting notifications about it. Then download, listen, get out there. We're going to have a lot of rain this week. I'm going to be kicking back and chilling, listening to my favorite podcast and us. So give us a download, listen, rate, review.
As I mentioned, we will be back with you tomorrow looking at the first part of running back rankings. Until then, you guys have a wonderful Monday night.